Saturday the 13th of June is a date 16-year-old Gerard can never forget. Like thousands of others, the sheltered student from the suburbs attended his first ever protest. The teenager, like many, was moved to join the multiracial Black Lives Matter rally by the brutal viral video of George Floyd's killing.
I didn't even know what to say when I could barely even watch it when it first popped up on my feed.
But on this Saturday, the Black Lives Matter organisers cancelled the protest out of fear of violence following the counter-protest planned by hard right groups. Gerard did not get the message in time. On Saturday, he found himself in between BLM supporters, the police and the far right.
I wanted to stay close to the police, but after a while, as I didn't want to lose my friends and I can't be too far, so I started to walk towards where they were. When I turned to the left, I see a whole mob of what I'm assuming to be far right supporters. But when one of them says to me, "Are you with them? Are you with them?" I'm like, "No." And then he starts running towards me, so I start running back, and then he attacks me from there. And then when I'm trying to defend myself, his friend comes with a bottle and he hits it into my face, and this gets me into the floor. So and then when I'm on the floor, I'm just getting punched and kicked.
Sitting alongside his mother, Gerard points to where he was hit. The teenager of slight build is still in shock. His sight is impaired and his body in pain. These are the pictures of the day the far right returned to our streets. The Home Office condemned the violence against officers, but what you do not see here are the victims of suspected racist attacks like Gerard.
When I was on the floor, I was thinking, there's no way that I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. And if I do get out of this, I don't know how I'm going to end up. Like when I was just even able to stand up, I felt blessed that I was even able to stand up after it happened.
What impact has this had on your entire family?
For him to just go to the first protest out of curiosity, he didn't make any card, he didn't go, no nothing, and to come back injured and almost losing his sight. Or his life, I'll say, for that matter. I don't know, it will take time for me to recover from this myself.
But this is not where the story ends. When Gerard, beaten and bloodied, sought the safety of officers, he was checked for injuries, but stopped and searched.
I didn't feel safe in the area, so I was like, "Oh yeah, can you escort me to anywhere I can be safe, perhaps like an ambulance, a tent?" And then he was like, no, he had to go and help the rest of his team. Where he did at least try and talk me through it and look for injuries, but he also stopped and searched me. Like he seemed a bit weary with me at the same time.
What's it like to hear your son recount his experience?
Who would have missed the blood? Had that been a 16-year-old white boy or black child, would they have ignored? Would that police officer? That's what I keep asking myself. But if you can go to a police officer bleeding, asking for help, you left him, you said you're going to help your colleagues. I don't know. I don't have faith anymore, and I'm scared for his own future.
This is the image we all remember from that day. An attendee of the hard right protest being carried to safety by BLM protester Patrick Hutchinson. The man Mr. Hutchinson was carrying was Brian Mayle. We now know a retired police detective, but we also know there was another hero, the man who first rescued Gerard, and Gerard has this message for him.
Thank you so much for not standing by when you see injustice and you see just discrimination happening, and that you should feel very proud of yourself, because some people might not have even jumped in, some people might have just watched, but the fact that you were brave enough to take on that much people just to save someone like me, then thank you very much.
The police say that a Section 60 order was in place, giving officers extra stop and search powers. They said an officer carried out an initial assessment and deemed it was not serious. They say Gerard was advised to go to the outer cordon. The ambulance service were called and officers waited until they arrived. Deputy Assistant Commissioner Amanda Pearson said,
"This incident is being treated as a racially aggravated assault. It is entirely unacceptable that anyone should be subject to an assault, especially one of this nature. and we have offered our full support to the victim in this case.
What do you think the attack in the day kind of tells us about modern Britain?
But we need to highlight that we think George Floyd is right here in Britain.
The family are being supported by the monitoring group and say the police only got in touch to investigate after Channel 4 News asked the Met for a response. So what are the questions raised? Young black men and teenagers are more likely to be stopped and searched, more likely to be fined under COVID powers, and even after an assault, this family believe they may be over-policed as suspects and under-policed as victims.
Simeon Brown reporting. Now, Leroy Logan is a former superintendent who spent 30 years in the Metropolitan Police. He's also a former chair of the Black Police Association. He joins us now. Leroy Logan, thank you for joining us. What do you make of this incident and how indeed the police dealt with it?
Well, it would appear that the officer's initial actions left a lot to be desired, in that he seemed to assess the young man more as a suspect than a patient or someone who needs medical aid. And you can tell by his demeanour and his actual look, you know, he is a young man. And so there should have been a greater emphasis on safeguarding and not on just enforcement of Section 60.
Would you anticipate, given all the events of the last few weeks and months indeed, that perhaps there would be a greater awareness throughout the police, all over the country really, that perhaps there really has to be real judgment made in dealing with ethnic minorities?
Well, you would think so, but these things are, in some people, the great majority of officers, I think, will respond accordingly. But unfortunately, there are some officers that it's going to take a lot of time to unlearn some of the cultural norms and values and the insensities and, unfortunately, unconscious bias and the racial profiling that some officers have been held to account by their first line and second line supervisors, the sergeant, the inspectors, those sort of people that should be holding officers to account. Because, you know, I'm sure if the young man has got all that blood, there were other officers there, supervisors, they should have made sure that the young person was being safeguarded. So, you know, you would think greater sensitivity, but it shows how ingrained things are and how things have to be moved on with the right sort of leadership and supervision.
Well, now his mother is going to make a formal complaint because she thinks race was at the heart of all this. Will she get a fair hearing, do you think? Do the processes exist now to have these sort of things properly investigated?
Well, I think any chief officer, including the commissioner, if he or she ignore the underlying issues and learning from not just George Floyd, but issues that happen over here in this country, I think it'd be a dereliction of duty if they don't act on these sort of cases and be proactive. Because it's not just about, well, we're learning and we're going to do better. It's going to be a lot more proactive on how they regain the trust and confidence of the community, especially the black community, because that's the cornerstone of police legitimacy, is trust and confidence. So we've got to have communities believing in the police service. And I hope chief officers will show that leadership and grit and make sure it distills right across the organisation to the street constable who are interfacing with young people like this.
Now, despite the fact that George Floyd's killing occurred in another country, do you think it is a kind of milestone that perhaps will have awakened a lot of thoughts in people's minds, particularly in the police force?
I think the movement that has been developed all across the world, I mean, we've seen it present itself in, look just how the football players are kneeling, and you can see police officers kneeling. So it's an acknowledgement of a life-changing, I think, issues that we cannot go back to what it was before. We've got to go forward. We've got to address these systemic failures, the individual officers whether it's in police or any other public service. We've got to make sure that people are looked at with respect and dignity and get the service that everyone should have. It shouldn't be one service for the majority and obviously a less of a service for the minority. It has to be unified and coherent and clear.
You joined 30 years ago. You became a superintendent. You were a trailblazer in many ways. But do you think there are more and more ethnic minority people following in your footsteps, or is it still static?
It's static, really. If you think about, different cultures make up over 40% of the population in just London alone, and it's only 40% of minority ethnic in the Met Police. So it is levelling off. And when you have cases like this, you have less chance of people wanting to join, because the youth program I've been running for the last 20 years, called Voyage Youth, those young people say they're over-policed and underprotected. And those are potential recruits. So we've got to foster good relations so people feel that the police service for them, so it's more reflective, and making sure that it's an organisation that is fit for the 21st century.